the Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
Good evening and happy Sunday. I'm Crystal L. Gunn, and welcome to another episode of Amazing Women Speak. Thank you for joining us. And so while you're getting settled in for the show, hit the share button, share Amazing Women Speak so your friends and followers can get in on this conversation. So Amazing Women Speak is sponsored by the Amazing Woman Network, which was created to unite and empower Black women globally, focusing on our core pillars of owning our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, owning our financial power, and increasing our social involvement. Please visit us on the web at Amazing Woman, WOMAN, network.com. Membership is now open. Please join us. And so season 4 of Amazing Women Speak ends this month, y'all. We have one more episode on the 18th. Next month is Home Ownership Month. And we definitely wanted to be sure that we got some information out about home ownership and talk to some dynamic women who do more than make sure you get in a home. They are also showing up in their communities, creating access and helping families build lasting wealth and stability. So today we talk more than mortgages. It's about purpose, power, and the sacred responsibility of helping others rise. This isn't just about moving property. It's about moving culture forward, one family at a time. And however, one of our guests will not be here because whatever this bug and this crazy weather is doing, she is way under the weather. So we do send Erica some healing vibes. So let's get into this conversation, and we're going to send Michelle some healing vibes too, because she's not at 100%. But come on in here and join us, please.
Good evening. Yes, I am here, going to give it the old college try, as they say. Yeah, whatever's going around is going around and sitting down at people's tables and grabbing hold of us. And today will be an act of perseverance. So I'm grateful to be here, grateful to have a conversation where we get to uplift women and to hear specifically how our commitment to community is showing up for our guest in a way that it's more, like you said, about more than just selling a property. It's about understanding what it means to build wealth in this kind of way. And we can't have this conversation without bringing her on. And as we do that, from whatever platform you are joining us from, we invite you to drop your questions and your comments in the chat. We'd love to pull you in and make you a part of this conversation. And if you've ever considered home ownership, if you're in a home and trying to figure out how do I stay in my home and how do I balance all of the things that come with home ownership as a new homeowner, we invite you to drop your questions in the chat so that, again, we can make them a part of this conversation. It is the fastest hour of our day. It will go quick. So we invite you to get in fast so that we can pull your questions and have them answered. But again, we cannot do that without an amazing guest sharing her portion of her amazing with us tonight. Talisa, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Thank you to the beautiful Crystal and Michelle, the dynamic duo. I appreciate the opportunity to be here again. My name is Talisa Cohen. I am a realtor in the local area. I also lead a team called the Next Level Real Estate Group, where I mentor to agents who are currently in the business, who want to grow and expand what they're able to offer as far as services, and then also coaching and mentoring to newer aspiring agents who are entering into the industry. So, you know, I understand the challenges that are inherent in this business. And then for those that are the external challenges, we have, you know, different strategies and tactics that we might touch on in this conversation, where we're able to overcome those obstacles to help people become homeowners, and then help those who own property but wish to sell be able to maximize the equity they've worked hard to build. But more importantly, it's like the internal challenges that we create for ourselves, those barriers to entry that make this career choice sometimes challenging. I mean, and even having been licensed for 7 years, practicing for about 5 or 6 years, like actively practicing. I can definitely speak from experience about how you have to get out of your head and into purpose, so that you can be most effective at helping the community. So that is what I'm most passionate about. I should also mention that I'm brokered by EXP. I'm one of, I don't know how many of us there are now, but I know it's over 100 independent agents that come together to work in collaboration. It's not intentional, but a lot of us do look like me. And I'm very proud for the success that we have had in the Michigan market, as well as branching out into other states as well, to help home ownership be more than just a thought, a dream, something you see in a magazine, but actually a reality for a lot of different people.
I love that. I love it. So because the industry just in it of itself, right, is challenging, especially when sometimes you try to stick and make sure people that look like us get into homes that wouldn't ordinarily have an opportunity or may have been turned away before. You're extremely talented and have the ability to service anybody you choose to service. Why is it important for you to make sure that in your, I don't know, in your group of clients that you save space and make room for people that look like you?
Well, like over time, and even before getting into real estate, having worked in the financial services industry, I understand the importance of advocacy and representation. And sometimes, the marketing and the voice that is put out there to advertise these things that are these tools or vehicles that are meant to help create stability are not necessarily targeted to certain audiences. So I think that having that relatability, I, as well as a number of other people that I work with, have taken ownership of making sure that we are getting the information to the people who can use the information, who may feel disengaged or disenfranchised, so that we can all have equal opportunity. Not everybody is going to take advantage. Not everybody is necessarily in position to, but we need to at least start the conversation, because you don't know what you don't know until you get, to a point where you want to make a move forward and don't necessarily know what that next step is. So one of the pillars of my business is definitely that empowerment through education piece.
And you do that well. And I loved when I started seeing the tagline, the realtor who listens, which is really, really important in our community and in this field, because so I almost cannot have this conversation without being able to pull my own experience in, because some of these things that you're going to be able to relate. My experience as that mortgage loan officer, and one of the things that I used to say to my clients was, you have to tell me the truth. You have to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Why is it? And because sometimes we want to hide things for shame, insecure, self-doubt, whatever, or we think it's something that we can hide and it's not going to come up. Why is it so important to tell the truth? And what made you come up and say, you know what, I really want to be this person that listens, as opposed to just saying, this is what you should do, this is how you should do it, and this is where you should live?
And so like when I started out in this business, it was important for me to kind of find my brand identity. It's like, why are you getting into this? Because real estate is truly a labor of love. Like it really is. I know people, watch millionaire listings or $1 million listings or whatever, and they think that like this is glitz and glam and everything. But it truly is a labor of love, especially when you carve out space to make sure that inclusion and that you are here to service anybody at any level. So it's not just about the people who like second homes or, luxury real estate, but also first time home buyers. It is really important for me to be the realtor who listens, because when I reflected back on my experience being a first time homeowner, I just really, I'm like, I really just kind of felt like I was out here and I saw a for sale sign and I was just like, okay, I'm trial and error, which I do not regret my decision to move forward and become a homeowner at all. I just know that there were pieces of the puzzle that I did not necessarily know. I didn't have that awareness about. And I think I made a very sound purchase, but the way that I would have leveraged it even still to optimize the opportunity, I did not have the information. And I believe that my realtor possibly asked questions, but he mostly guided the process. Like he just kind of was in go mode, where it's like if you take the time to listen to what a person's needs are, where they, and to get a better understanding of where they are, you can really make this more than just a transaction, more than just purchasing a home. You could be affecting legacy, generations of people, because, it really is about understanding that this is having a roof over your head and being able to control your living costs as far as your, the monthly cost of that actual dwelling is important. But what we're doing here in helping homeowners is much more strategic than just that. And I think that you get to be much more effective when you listen to understand where a person is, where they aim to get to, and how you can help them, get there soonest. And then also be a support after the transaction closes, because this is, again, generational.
Right, like it's the biggest purchase an individual will make, right? And
Mhm.
the fear as a first-time home buyer, how did you recognize what those missing pieces were? And how do I know if I have the right person working on my behalf?
So recognizing what those missing pieces were, I think, it is really paying attention and being present when people are either initiating the conversation by reaching out to me, being referred to me, or and I also attend various community events where I get to connect with people. And over time, when you're talking to people about home ownership or making that leap from becoming a renter to a home owner, you get, you connect the dots and find those similarities in the conversation. And one of the things that I will say is, not even as much as I would have thought that the difference or the biggest difference was a socioeconomic one, it really is not about how much a person makes. It really is about access to information and broadening someone's perspective on what it means to be a homeowner. So it really was truly just getting into different rooms, having conversations with people of from all different walks and ways of life, and finding those common threads, like where are the biggest needs, where are the biggest gaps. And really that financial literacy piece that Crystal has definitely championed has been the one that we find to be most prevalent, or that I find to be most prevalent, no matter who the client is. So, I think that finding the way to bridge the gap between real estate and financial literacy to solve a number of different problems has been kind of like the sweet spot for me.
And I love it because, and I don't know, I'll probably say some things today that kind of challenges some people. One is, I don't think everybody should be. I don't think everybody needs to necessarily own the home that they live in. And I hear people say, "Oh no, everybody should own a home." Do I think people should invest in real estate? Absolutely, but I don't necessarily believe everybody should own the home in which they live in, for various reasons. Everything is not cookie cutter, so you have to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tell me your thoughts on that piece in regards to home ownership.
So I do lean towards, it being most beneficial to be in the ownership position when it's, involving your home where you reside, especially like, the economy as of late has definitely made it more clear that there are just some costs that we cannot control. So in order to be able to sustain and maintain, if you can at least secure that piece where, okay, my home, I'm in a fixed mortgage, which, there are different tools that people can use to purchase homes when you're talking about financing. But, the one that tends to be the most is fixed. That's what it's called, fixed for a reason. So it's
And so just to be clear, because you're saying a fixed mortgage, but I want the listeners who may not know to know that when you're saying fixed mortgage, you are talking about fixed interest rate. So your interest rate does not change throughout the life of the mortgage. And
right.
Yeah,
it does not change. Yeah. So your principal and interest payments, when you sign on that dotted line, provided you don't make changes by refinancing, then, that payment is fixed for 30 years. So if groceries continue to, skyrocket, what your housing costs are going to be, generally, with some things being still variable, but for the most part, you can have a roundabout number of what your fixed cost would be. So like that is probably where I lean most towards home ownership. And then also not to focus on the negative, but I just find that there's more safeguards in place if I'm an owner versus renting. And, life circumstances might change where, layoffs and things of that nature. You may have different opportunities available to you. If you've established equity in your home, this may be a time where unfortunately you may have to sell, but it gives you an extra cushion to make it until you can create some other income for yourself. If God forbid you are behind on a payment, you can miss more than one payment and get caught up or make arrangements if you're in an ownership position versus as a renter, you kind of are at the mercy of your landlord and what they are willing to tolerate and what the laws are as far as rental law, or tenants' rights. So those are the reasons why I am pro home ownership. But I agree, people are in different phases of life. Maybe you're downsizing. Maybe, you're trying to figure out, well, will I continue to live in this city or am I going to move out of state? So I think that it is true and worth saying that each transaction is going to be different. I think that's another reason why it's important to be Talisa, the realtor who listens, because we can customize an experience based on that person's needs. And we do look at more than just today. So it's like, what are your plans for the next 3 years? And let's make decisions based on that, for example.
What's the biggest fear you have to help new buyers dismantle about this process?
Being stuck. So, a lot of people really think that 15-year or 30-year mortgage means that they have to stay in the home for that long. Right. And, especially what I find like with millennials now, they like to have that autonomy or that feeling of freedom. Like, I don't want to be stuck to a job. I don't want to be stuck in a home. I don't want to listen to my mom. No. But so it is really about explaining that this is to your advantage to have this amount of time before you have a total, amount due versus it being an anchor that makes you stuck. So once we overcome that misconception, things tend to move and become a lot more exciting. I'm like, oh, I don't have to stay there for the full time of, the 30 years. Okay, well, let's have a conversation. Let's, I know my credit is good enough because nowadays, the requirements to be a renter are very much like or more
More, yeah.
than what it is to qualify for a mortgage. So,
Oh, wait, I don't have to have a 750 to buy a home?
no, you do not. I wish we
No
had.
one is missed, right? Like, especially with millennials thinking. So yeah, talk to folks about that.
And thinking that they have to, relinquish or levy their whole entire life savings for, the purchase of this home. Now, I will say that it is very, you are encouraged, if you're thinking about becoming a homeowner, to create that emergency account and various different savings accounts for incidentals. So these are things that I would recommend someone do, whether they were buying a home or renting, because you never know what's going to happen in life, and we have expenses. But it doesn't cost 30%. You don't have to put 30% down. There are so many programs now, and I'm like, wow, it's almost mind blowing what I have been able to see firsthand and be able to be a part of, helping people become homeowners and get grants. I mean, not even loans for down payment assistance, but grants, upwards of $30,000 and $40,000 to put towards the purchase of their first home. And because your typical, and I don't want to step on any toes. I know Erica was going to be speaking about this from her perspective, but we can say in general terms, if you're buying your first home, and you're planning to occupy that property, a lot of times there are programs where you can do 3%, 3.5%, maybe 5% down at a minimum. But these programs are helping a lot of home buyers put that down, cover closing costs. I've even had some leave the table with the money that they put into the deal for home inspections and appraisals and things of that nature. So there are so many different programs to make this opportunity of home ownership more affordable and it's, a lot of people will think, well, I probably make too much money to qualify for these programs. It's not just geared towards lower earning individuals either. So I've been quite pleasantly surprised to see, people who are good, or they earn above what, they're not impoverished, they earn above a living wage, and they're still able to qualify for some programs. But even, in the case where maybe you don't get the grants, even having the opportunity to have a reduced interest rate can make a marketable difference, especially if you're looking to leverage that home at some point as an investment property. You want to keep your costs down so that you can create more and more opportunity to earn income from that property. And I know I'm kind of just opening up a can, so I won't go any further with that.
No. It's really good information, and it's definitely things that people need to know. And it goes back to Lisa, the realtor who listens, because you said it earlier. We don't know what we don't know, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that the typical thing is go get your pre-approval before you find a realtor, because a realtor is not going to show you anything unless you have that pre-approval. So I'm a firm believer in, and because I send you people all of the time, go find you a realtor, right? Because the realtor knows where to go get your financing.
Mm-hmm.
The realtor knows about those grants and down payment assistance, and so it's more than just where you're living. And I think that piece is really important, because then I always tell people, don't ever just walk into somewhere blind. Don't just go pick a realtor out of hat or mortgage loan officer out of a hat.
We are not all created equal.
What'd you say?
So we are not all created equal.
We are not all created equal. And that opportunity to talk to somebody who has been referred to you, I think it makes that process easier. Michelle mentioned earlier, this is the biggest purchase of your life. Like it
Mhm.
really is. And you may buy a bigger home, but up until this point, this winds up being the biggest purchase of your life. And I love when you said customize and experience,
Yeah.
right? Because buying a home can be stressful,
Mhm.
but working with the right individuals makes it an easier experience. But when you talk about customizing an experience, walk us through that process.
So, and this was something that comes with time, but understanding and getting to build a rapport in a short amount of time with the person is very important. So, when I onboard a new client, before they even become a client, we have a consultation. So,
Stop right there.
okay.
And the reason why I want you to stop right there is work with a ton of realtors. And the first time that I heard you say on board a client, I was like, oh, she getting all my people. Right. Like, because it just goes back to, again, you're not just telling somebody how to do a thing. You really are listening. What was it? I do want you to go ahead and answer the question, but I also want you to say what made you come up with that's the process that I need to do, because it also lets you know if that's someone that you want to work with.
Well, I will tell you, and I think that so before getting into real estate, I worked as a project manager. So I approach the home buying process like I would approach deploying a new system at a Fortune 500 company. I need to understand what your objectives are. Do you have any idea of what the problems are that you might face? Have you thought about what the risks are in this situation? And I'm really big on efficiency. I like to preserve my time and also my clients, most importantly, because, while this is what I do, I understand my clients have jobs, they have families. So a lot of things have to be prioritized and time has to be managed well. So being able to be the realtor who listens, I'm like, okay, what are some of our, what are going to be some of those things that we have to work through to be able to get to point Z? And then also, one of the things I think that makes me a skillful negotiator is that I'm not only just considering the side that I represent, but in the case where I'm representing the buyer, I'm listening to the sales side too. I'm reaching out and I'm having conversation and in a sense building relationship over there, not agency, but relationship, where I can understand some of the things that might be motivating that seller to sell, how quickly they're looking to do things, and see what we can use to our advantage to make excuse me, a deal work for everybody. So I just kind of relate that back to being a project manager. You have to understand that there are basically three pillars to a project: time, budget, and quality. So I think the same goes for a real estate transaction. And I'm better when I know all the pieces.
And Deborah says she loves the concept as you're showing that you care and not just in it for the commission,
Oh.
right? Which is really is really huge. My mother was a real estate agent at one point. My brother used to own a brokerage house, and my mother would say that she would come across agents, and the moment that paperwork was signed, that the only thing that they looked for after that was when was that commission check going to hit. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it's really, really important in this arena. Almost like in the medical field, you really want somebody that's working for you and understanding what's wrong with you. And so the questions that I have to tell the story. So I referred somebody to Talisa, and this person called me back, and they were like, she started telling me a story, and I instantly was like, yeah, this is not a good fit. Not because Talisa wasn't thorough, but because the individual felt like you were asking too many personal questions. And so I called to Lisa to apologize, right? Because I was like, well, that's crazy. But I also had to tell the individual, she's asking you questions. The more she knows, the more she can deliver on what it is that you desire. The more she asks, the more she knows, the easier the process that it will be for you. And she couldn't wrap her head around it. She's still not in a house, by the way, but it just really makes a difference. And if you're working with somebody, mortgage broker, mortgage loan officer, real estate agent, real estate broker, and they're not asking you those questions, you need to find somebody else. And
Oh,
that's just my opinion, who's not a realtor, no longer a mortgage loan officer. But if they don't have the time to ask you the questions and to get to the heart of what it is you want, your needs, your issues, your desires, you got the wrong person.
And like I said, we're building a relationship, and a lot of times, and a large part of my business is based on referral now. But there have definitely been points in my career as I'm building this real estate business where, I'm working with people who don't have a personal connection to me, even by 6 degrees of separation, or, I don't have any awareness of them. So it's like, I think that it's very important that you have a relationship with your realtor, that they do understand what your needs are, what some of your concerns are, what are going to be some of the challenges. How can I help make this the best experience for you? And the way that I'm able to customize that experience is by getting to know you a bit. And I'm very big on confidentiality and staying in my lane. But so, I ask questions in a very intentional fashion too, so that I am not imposing in areas that, are not necessarily to my client's benefit. So there are some things that, I don't indulge in asking questions on, because they're not necessarily pertinent to what it is you have reached out to me to help you to do. So I want just enough insight, just enough awareness to make sure that we are operating in compliance, in compliance with the law, but also that when you are done, you are able to say, I did not go through this process feeling blind. I have a better understanding of what the home buying or real estate process is now than when I began before. And one of the things that I get as a compliment, which makes me feel super good, is that clients that I have worked with are able to go and have conversation out, within their circle, within their family. And you're like, yeah, I can talk to people about this, where before they had nothing but questions, where they have become at least that first point of contact enough to refer them to me or to someone else who they might feel comfortable working with. And I absolutely love that, because I'm like, it takes a lot of the fear and removes it from the process. And once you remove that fear, then it's like, okay, game on, we can play Monopoly.
Lisa, how much knowledge as a first-time buyer do I need to come to the table with, right? Or can I have none and know that my realtor is going to walk me through every step? Or are there some things that I should be thinking about as I engage in this process?
So I do encourage consumers or the public, like if it's something that you're interested in now, more so than any time in our lives, we have access to a lot of information. Mm-hmm. But you don't necessarily know what's real and what's clickbait and everything. So I think that there is still a ton of value in working with someone who is knowledgeable about the market, who is a specialist in the market, who can answer some of those questions, clarify some of the things that you might see in your news feed. I think that, I welcome people who don't really feel like they know much of anything about the process besides, I want to buy a house, but I don't know where to start. Like
Right.
those are really exciting opportunities for me, because one of the things, and honestly, it really has been based on conversation and a review that I get at the end. But one of the things that I have been working on as an opportunity to grow and improve my business is to actually create something that will be in written form for us to be able to continue the dialogue. Like, how was your experience and what do you feel like now versus when we started this process, to have that in writing? But a lot of times the clients share that in the reviews that they leave anyway, and that they felt empowered, but they also felt like they had someone that was advocating on their behalf along the way, available to answer questions. I joke because I'm like, I had to create some work-life balance where it's like, okay, I do want to make sure I answer your questions in a timely manner, but if you text me at 1:00 in the morning, I used to be because I'm typically up at that time. I used to respond to those because I can't stand the thought of not knowing, and then like me being able to relate to my client. I'm like, I don't want them to go to bed with this question, but I'm like, it's okay, Talisa. You can calm down and answer them in the morning. So I think that I'm trying to think, which one do I prefer when it's like they come with feeling
Right, like the junior realtor versus
oh yeah, like I've definitely had them where it's like you're just here to make sure I'm not a danger to myself, but I know what I'm doing. So like that's that customized experience. Some of them don't need you to explain the ABCs of real estate because maybe they've gone through the process before and purchased a home or helped someone else sell a home. I mean, and then other times, I find that people think that they have an understanding, but there's still opportunity, and they leave the experience feeling like, oh, I thought I knew like everything, but you pointed out some things that I still was not aware of. And so I think that that is what, that's what brings me joy. It's like, if I feel like I can add value, then I've done my job.
what was missing in the industry that led you to coaching and mentoring?
And this is look, I feel bad because like I definitely don't this is not to be disparaging towards anyone, but I think a certain level of professionalism is what I found to be missing. And so I don't know how many of the viewers know that you don't necessarily have to have corporate background. In the state of Michigan, you don't necessarily have to have college experience to get into real estate, and possibly never have, this may be some people's first job or career. And so I think that one of the things that I believe that it is some influence and some impact that I and others have had is to bring raise the bar as far as a level of professionalism in the way that we communicate in a timely fashion, communicate clearly, set expectations, and then also have that listening ear. So it's not the same transaction for everybody. It is a different one. So I think bringing that level of professionalism has been one thing. And then also being able to, if you want to call it code switching or code shifting, having that conversation, no matter what level of experience you're at, whether you are an experienced investor or this is your first time purchasing a home that you're going to live in, or someone who wants to get into real estate investing for the first time. It's all about being able to communicate in a way that people can understand where they have opportunity. And so I think that is something that I also offer in my services. And bridging the gap too. So Crystal, I think in the introduction talked about, this is not just getting you into a home, but also maintaining that relationship so that you stay in the home, so that you can increase the value of your investment. All of those different opportunities or facets of what the services that I'm providing, I think kind of make me different. I have clients that will reach out to me like, okay, Talisa, I'm ready to sell this house and move on to the next one. Or I'm in this house. I need to, like, who do I contact to cut my grass? Like, I mean, I really am passionate about being a resource. So it's like, you trusted me on this journey, and I don't want you to feel like you're left alone once you get those keys, because once you get the keys is when it really all starts. It gets real.
Yeah, it doesn't stop at signing that mortgage. That's when it really starts. And to be able to have those individuals that you can turn to, because you don't know, and you don't know that you're going to have the question until the thing arises, and you're like, okay, who do I call to ask this question? Okay, call that realtor that helped you. Call that mortgage loan officer if you have some financial questions or issues, so that they can direct you to that place. That's a powerful relationship, and one that you should continue to have and stick with that person throughout your life. So again, now you've been in this house for 20 years. If Talisa's still doing more, is a realtor or a broker in 20 years, and now you're ready to downsize and sell it, you can call that person back. And if your kids are now ready to buy, okay, you send them to the person that helped you, and the person that worked so hard to get you in that thing. And it should be like, just like you'll have family saying, well, this is my family attorney. Well, this is my family realtor. You know what I mean? And we have to, especially in our communities, start to make sure that we're creating those type of relationships that last, not just for me, but for my kids, for my god kids, for my nephew, so that it's building that relationship and it's building that village. And you've definitely served some of those that I love the most and helped them get property. So I truly appreciate you for that.
And I think that's why representation is, where you can find the real value in representation, and making sure that the person who you are choosing to be your agent, because that's what they are your agent. They are advocating on your behalf, not making decisions for you, because this is a client-led situation, but we become a team, so that and my sister, it makes me laugh, because she's like, I felt like I got this, I had this really great experience, and I could always call my sister and ask her questions, because I was her agent when she purchased her first home. And then she's like, and then as I got to experience her as a realtor, I'm like, I feel like she's doing this for everybody. I feel cheated. I feel cheated.
You feel special anymore.
I had to do a little something more, like go over and help her with her garden or something. That's not something that I typically do. But
no, it's awesome what you give back and what you teach. My nephew had been working with somebody, and we were on a call one day, and he said, I don't know, whatever happened with the deal, it did not go through, right? But he had been working with this person, and they weren't responsive as he wanted it to be. And it seemed like, I said, oh, call Talisa. And it seemed like in this really short amount of time, he then was sitting at the purchase table buying a property. And it's so funny, because I literally, either today or yesterday, he was posting on social media him up on this ladder cutting the trees, and he was like, in the yard, and he was like, I love this stuff now. And I know he has that bug for wanting to be an investor, and he bought a 2-family, which I know you helped through that process and educated him more on it. So I thank you for that. And it is showing in what he's doing.
I love that for him, because I mean, yeah, I don't really ask how old somebody is when we're going through the process, but I gather that he is at that phase where he is growing and, establishing himself in his career, and he's looking for opportunities to not just have to trade time for money. And I love that for him, because I'm like, man, I remember when I got my first apartment, like paying $1,100 a month for a 2-bedroom. And I'm like, I just wish that I would have had that person in my ear saying, like, buy a duplex, that I could have started my investment portfolio sooner. But, in the fact that I wanted to point out, like, we get to the table in an efficient manner. We don't get there quickly because clients are just buying anything. We still go through the process of making sure that the title is clear and warrantable, making sure that there is a full inspection and the client is comfortable with what they are assuming, and negotiating various things in terms of making sure that they feel confident in what they're purchasing. And then that next step, affordability is big. So it's like, let's not necessarily only focus on what you can afford from a numbers perspective, but what are you comfortable with paying? What are going to be your objectives? And make sure that this property fits into that schema. So, I don't profess to be a tax professional or legal professional. I'm not giving that type of advice, but, just from a strategic perspective, and making sure that the purchase or the sale makes sense for where they're trying to go next.
And that's part of that listening piece. The reason why it seems like it was rapid is because I know you listened to what he wanted and what he was trying to accomplish and where he wanted to be, and having that knowledge, you're not just looking all over the place. You can focus and direct on trying to fit his needs, and it worked out.
That's the biggie right there, listening, so that you can have that focused search. And sometimes my clients are mind blown, because it's like, man, I'm like in love with the first house that I saw. And, it's like, hey, if the first house that you saw fits, go with it. A lot of times they don't feel comfortable with that. So we go and we look at other properties, and, because time is of the essence, especially in the market that we're in right now, that's another thing that my clients get from me is, we're going to go through this process and we're going to make time. I need you to prioritize this, because you definitely have my attention like you're my only client. And I understand what their sense of urgency is too, and customize the experience based upon those needs.
You said something really important that I want to make sure we touch on, because it's not buying that property. And you talked about affordability and making sure you have that payment that you're comfortable with, because and if Erica was here, we would definitely talk about this as well. But when you get that mortgage pre-approval, it's based on your gross income.
Yes.
You pay your bills on your net income.
Yes.
So it's real important to know that this payment that you have is something that that you can do, and you can do easily. And I know you are having those type of conversations with your clients, and not just necessarily going off of, oh, this person is approved for $350,000, but they really don't want to pay that $350 payment. Exactly. So it's those things when you have someone, because you could easily say, no, let's just find you this $350,000 house, because that's more commission for you. But then to say, no, where are you comfortable in this payment? And let's really talk about that. And it may knock $100,000 off of that, which winds up being less commission for you. But because you listen and you are an agent, you're working for that client. Talk to us a bit about buyer's agent, seller's agent, and why you want your own agent to represent you.
So that is a big one. And like I referred to my first time purchasing a home when I was driving down the street and saw that for sale sign outside, and I called like, oh, I haven't a clue what values are in this area. I just saw a house that I like. So I picked up the phone and I called, and I'm talking to this agent on the other end, and oh, well, yeah, I pay this for rent right now. And, this is what I make. And, I'm sharing all this information because I'm excited about this house that I've seen. And I'm like, and like, I haven't even been on the inside of it. And there, you know what I mean? The agent, I won't say that there was ill intent necessarily,
Right.
but they certainly didn't put the pause on me like, wait, don't tell me anymore. Let's set up a showing to make sure you even like this property. But first, before we do that, let's, get you with someone who will represent your best interest, because when you are talking to the seller's agent, they have a fiduciary or a legal responsibility to create a good deal for their seller. And I think that it is crucially important for buyers to protect their own interests, because this is not the same thing as if you go into the mall and purchase a pair of shoes that if the shoes are priced at $325 or so, that this is what you have to pay for the shoe. No, there are a number of different things that go into what you ultimately pay for a home once you close on it. And it's like, you don't want to give away your ability to negotiate those things by sharing information. It doesn't necessarily need to be known by the opposing side. So when you're talking about a real estate transaction, there's different types of agency. You have buyer's agency. This person represents the buyer in the buyer's best interest. There is a seller or a listing agent who represents the seller and that listing. And then there's also dual agencies. So, when you get into a situation like when I was speaking to that agent of that pretty house that I drove by, if I had worked with that person, essentially they would have been operating as a dual agent. So theoretically and legally, they're not supposed to represent either one of our best interests at that point. It's like, I'm basically here to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, but, I'm not negotiating for either of you. We're talking human factors. So the likelihood of that happening once they've already had an established relationship with the seller is, it's just best for each person, to have their own representation in a lot of instances. Sometimes it doesn't really, it's not as critical. So but hopefully I answered your question.
So, yeah. So, right, like I said, this is the fastest hour of the day, right, and we have a question that we want to lift up. So Deborah wants to know, do you know what happens to seniors who have homes, however, no family members, and that person passes away? What happens to the home?
Oh, wow. So this is big, and I'm so glad to see that there are starting to be more and more conversations out there on social media and amongst, community groups and things that talk about estate planning, because if you do not have a will or trust, then, everything pretty much has to go through probate when there is a person who owns property, real or personal, to decide. They're looking at the value of this property and who has a legal right or interest in it. And so everybody is encouraged to cover their assets through insurance, but also not just through insurance, also in making sure that you have left clear instruction about what should happen to that property, in the case that someone passes away. So, when a senior passes, if they don't have that will or trust, it has to go through probate court, and some effort is made to understand who, like the next of kin, or who these people's family members are. But worst case scenario, if things, if they're is no next of kin or no one to step up and speak up for that property, then I mean it can go to the state.
Hmm. And yeah, unfortunately, yeah. And so it's really, really important that we're having those conversations, because it's one of the things that people just don't know. And so the more you know, and
Well, not really to state. We should say, like, there are different levels or tiers of things that
right.
happen. You got to have somebody to, because there are, I mean, even if you buy a house cash, there are still costs associated with owning property. So, property taxes are a very real thing, whether you have a mortgage or you own that home outright. You inherited from a family member, there are taxes associated with that. And if you don't have someone managing your estate, then you could easily lose control of a property, and that the municipality does then
Hmm.
get to decide what happens. And yeah, that's unfortunate.
Getting the answers and getting the help, I can never stress it enough. It's super, super, super important. 2 minutes. What do if somebody is first time home buyer looking to buy a house, thinking about it, um, they're renting, they're 3 months into their lease, they know they don't want to sign a new one. When should they start looking and talking to realtors and mortgage loan officers to make sure that when that lease is up, they're ready?
You should start talking to a realtor, mortgage loan officer, reaching out to your community housing networks, all that as soon as you have the inkling that you want to become a homeowner, so that you can gauge how ready you are. And also, because you don't want to be making these decisions on the fly, just, oh, I got to find a place in a month because my lease is up and I don't want to renew it. So now you're feeling forced and pressured to make decisions. So it's like, I mean, really, there is never a too early time
Correct.
to begin the process of asking questions so that you have an understanding. I know for some people, it's like, well, I'm open to living anywhere. Some others have very specific, I need to be this close to work. I only want to live in, this kind of community that offers these amenities. And so you want to be prepared, just like with anything else, you got to budget and prepare for that purchase so that you can know how ready you are.
I cannot stress enough. We put so much um, respect, if you will, and push people to get educations and you know go get an education, go get a degree, go. We have to use that same urgency and respect when it comes to financial. I don't like the term literacy, financial liberation. We
Mm.
have to go in and get that same knowledge and respect it and know that the more you know, right? And the more knowledge you have in that financial arena, the better off you are. And you probably can't get that knowledge from the person that's sitting next to you at your job, because that's what they all do.
Yeah.
It's not, you gotta go get it. And I think when we specifically in our community decide that, you know what, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna get as much financial knowledge as I can, we're changing our lives, but then also generations. And I always say we need to be thinking 10 generations deep, or
Oh,
we're not doing our jobs. Talisa, thank you so much for all of the information, for your candor. Thank you for taking care of all of the people that I have sent to you to get to get homes. The reports always come back stellar. It's home ownership month next month, and remember, home ownership doesn't stop when you sign on the dotted line. It's just the beginning, and you need to make sure that you're prepared. And working with somebody like Talisa, the realtor who listens, is going to help to get you prepared. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us all of these nuggets. Miss Michelle, sending you
Yes.
some healing vibes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, Lisa, great information. How can folks reach you?
So I am available by phone. I don't know if you guys put my contact information out there, but by phone, I have my website, talisacohen.exprealty.com. I'm also on social media. You can find me on Facebook. And I struggle with, I think I just consolidated, is Talisa Cohen, the realtor who listens. On Instagram and Facebook now. My personal page is Talisa Sells Homes, which I'm like, I like both because I like both because, I'm really big on the information gathering piece, but also getting to the business of getting to the closing table. I think is one of the areas in which I shine as well. Not to pat myself on the back,
No,
but
pat yourself on the back. You do great
to
work.
explain to people, like, because all of us are not made equal, and you really want to make sure that you are choosing someone, whether that be me or someone else, who has puts that foot forward from the first conversation and shows you that energy and that interest in what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. If you are in the market, if you are curious about what it means to take the next step, please reach out to Talisa. She really is a gift bringer to what it means to enter this process and come out feeling like you have enough information to make the right decision. Talisa, thank you for the gift of who you are. Thank you for blessing my daughter through her process, and allowing her to experience it in a way that she felt like she had all of the information to make the right decisions. Crystal, as always, thank you for the gift of who you are and what you bring to these conversations and creating platforms that allow these conversations to exist, that we get to grow collectively, and understanding that at birth it was established that our amazing exists and we should own it without apology. My name is Michelle Harper. I am a Black woman. Without apology, I own my amazing.
Talisa, your
I
closing
want
remarks, but I just want to say Chelsea in the comments says, hello, Talisa, and thank you so much. So I know you all talked before as well. So,
Oh yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to say to these two powerhouses, Crystal and Michelle, like, no, seriously, these are not just words that are meant to flatter. You two ladies are remarkable and amazing, and you inspire me to level up. And when I talk about what I bring to this industry, I'm inspired by women like yourselves to see a need and rise to the occasion of trying to make sure that we are covered. You all cover me. I hope that in some way I cover you, and I thank you for trusting me when you do send those referrals to know that they will be handled with care. Or I don't even like to use the word handle, but they will be taken care of. And it really is about community. I know we got to wrap up, but the thing that means so much to me is seeing that, seeing my imprint on the community at large, driving by and being able to point out to my children a new business that opened up where we helped someone get into a commercial space, or a home that was either sold or purchased through working with my group, the Next Level Real Estate Group. Like, there is like no greater feeling than knowing that, all of our mission should be to leave this earth better than how we found it. And I'm like, if I can just do that through helping people accomplish their real estate goals, then I feel like, I got purpose. So thank you both for having me. My name is Talisa Cohen, and I'm a Black woman who owns my amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. We got one more episode, y'all. Not next week, because I think next week is Mother's Day.
Yes, it is.
So happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there that are listening. We will be back on May 18th for the last episode of the season. And the topic will be when I realized I was amazing. So have a great night. Michelle, sending you continued
Thank you.
prayers
Thank
and
you.
healing vibes, sending healing vibes out to Erica. To Lisa, thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.